Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at MedCommsNetworking.com. So information services, resources, activities, and so on for people who work in and around the global MedComms business. So people who work in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, and so on, the associated businesses. You'll find lots of information at MedCommsNetworking.com. Importantly, we produce a lot of video type content, which you will find over at NetworkPharma TV, along with other people's videos. There's a good collection of something like 500 odd videos now, all around the topic of medcoms generally. Importantly, also, a lot of what we do is trying to provide information to people who'd like to know more about our business. Maybe you'd like a job as an account manager, medical writer, editor, or whatever. You'll find a lot of insights and information and careers guides and so on at FirstMedCommsJob.com. So go and have a look at that. Okay. Today, I'm absolutely delighted. We've got three panelists, three medical writers. We do this from time to time. We get some medical writers together and have a discussion about what it's like to be in medical writing. And I'm trying to get the personal journeys out of you guys. Okay, so how did you find medcoms? How did you get in? And what sort of work you're doing at the moment? So without further ado, let's start with Ellie. Ellie, just give us the headlines, who you are, where you are, and a little bit about the company you're working for. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see in the little Zoom box, my name's Ellie Punchard. I work for Camaradas. It's one of the agencies under the AMICULUM umbrella. There's 11 agencies. Here we have offices across the UK, some in the US, and a few in Asia, but I'm based in the UK.
Okay, thank you very much. And Luke, we said we'd go to you next. So same question to you.
Yeah, so I'm Luke. I work for Ashfield MedComms, which is part of the Initio umbrella. So I've worked for this company for just over 2 years now, and we have offices in the UK as well as some in the US and also based in South Africa as well.
Fantastic. Okay, and Lulu, then go and then complete the set.
Hi there. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about my experience. I'm Lulu Hill. I've been a medical writer at Fishawack Health for around 18 months. Fishawack Health is a multinational all-service medcoms agency. So we do medical education, including scientific literature, which is your manuscripts and your abstracts, as well as a lot of med affairs, website content, videos, podcasts, animations. We also do some consultancy bits as well. And we have offices all around the globe in the UK, US, Europe. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You've just frozen there, Lulu, to go on. So we'll hope that that comes back. We heard you, but your pictures. Oh, there you go. All right. So just need to bear that in mind, but I think we'll get away with that one. Thank you very much. Okay. So we know who you are. Okay. So look, we're going to bounce around a little bit. Audience members, please send us your comments and your questions. We'll weave that into the conversation. Okay. Lulu, I'm going to come back to you. And I want you to take me from the beginning, okay? So just give me a bit of a potted history. Where were you at uni, whatever? How did you get into medical writing? How did you even find medcoms to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did an integrated master's in pharmacology at the University of Bath, which included a placement year. My placement year was in a lab doing scientific research. And I learned a huge amount, but I quickly realized that the lab wasn't for me, as is the case for many people doing research degrees. So I graduated and thought, what am I going to do now? Because I feared that the only option available was to push through the academic route, get my PhD, and spend the rest of my life in a lab, which I didn't find particularly appealing. And then I spent a little bit of time looking around, and then medical communications appeared as sort of a beacon of light, which gives like an opportunity for me to be close to the science and carry on learning while making the research engaging for other people, which was sort of exactly what I was after. So I think it's really great to be part of what we're doing today and raising awareness of a really exciting career that a lot of people wouldn't have thought of before.
Okay, so I'm going to try and tease out a little bit more in terms of you finding medical communications. A lot of people talk about stumbling across the business. I just wonder, can you remember how you stumbled across it?
Yeah, so for me, after university, I went back home, and then it quite quickly became a family task to get Lulu a job. So I'd like to take the credit, but actually it was my dad who was, I don't know how he finds these things, but he came up to me and said, Lulu, this is perfect for you, medical communications. I think you can find it on LinkedIn or something. Get out of the house.
Right, okay. Get out of the house. Okay. All right, that's cool. And we'll come back to some of these stages in the process, but that's interesting to hear that background. You've been in medical writing now about a year and a half or so at Fishawack, yeah?
That's correct.
Got that right? Okay. Fishawack being the first medcoms agency that you've joined. Okay, right. I'm going to bounce around, so I'm just keeping you all on your toes here, guys. Okay, so Ellie, come on. Same basic question. I'm just interested in that first step. What were you doing, and how did you find medcoms?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose I had just finished up my master's degree in Belgium, and I was wondering what to do next with my life. I graduated during the pandemic, and of course, during the time I was thinking, I had the time to think, I don't think that the lab's really it for me. I'm not sure that I really want to do a PhD, a lot like Lulu. So I ended up looking for jobs, and I typed in life sciences into the search bar, and luckily enough, a medical writer position popped up, and I started looking into it a lot more. And I just thought the variety of, I guess, medical conditions that you can learn about, all of like the latest research and things like that, it just sounded like it was right up my alley. I applied, and here I am.
And here you are. 2 years. And again, just for everyone's information, you've been at AMICULUM for a couple of years, am I right? And It was your first job, so basically it was entry level into AMICULUM. Okay, all right, come on then, Luke. Same question to you, basically. Tell us how you got in.
Yeah, sure. So I was doing my master's, I was coming up to the end of that, and started to look at what careers I could go into, and my search was fairly broad actually. So just sort of stumbled across medcoms when I was searching for new jobs to go into. But at the time, my applications weren't too successful. So I went to another job. So I was a health advisor for a bit. So help people sort of lower their blood pressure, lower their cholesterol, that sort of thing. And then in the process of doing that job, I managed to get a bit more experience in terms of writing science and being wary of different target audiences and adapting my writing because of that. And then the 2 years doing that job, I got the experience that made my application a lot more sort of appealing to different medcoms jobs. So managed to move into it following that, actually.
Can I ask, Luke, did you know you wanted to be a writer? Or did you look around medcoms and go, there's different ways in, and you've ended up in writing? Or just give me a flavour of the thinking there. Yeah,
so I didn't have the intention of becoming a writer. It was a much more broad search after uni, because like Lulu and Ellie mentioned, I knew I didn't want to work in a lab. So I was trying to like explore different opportunities that would come about that wouldn't involve that side of things. So medical writer is one that popped up. And then following doing that job, health advisor, I realized that it's something that just seemed a bit more appealing at that time. So it was more this, I just found myself going down that route rather than always having that intention.
Okay, Lulu, was that the same for you? Did you see medical writing go, that's what I want to do? Or was it more general that, and then you ended up in medical writing?
I think for me, because I really enjoy the writing side of science. As soon as I realized that it was something I could do, I thought, yeah, perfect.
Okay, and you were doing what your dad told you anyway.
Yeah, obviously.
just, I'm sorry, Lulu. I'm sorry if I missed this. So just to clarify this, did you do an MSc?
Yes.
You did do an MSc. So all three of you are MSc and into medcoms. Okay. Again, I'm just going to ask the same question bluntly of you, Ellie. Do you remember? Were you just very, you went down the writing route, or did you look at different sorts of routes into medcoms?
I had also looked at editor positions as well, but yeah, writing is where I found myself. Like everyone else has said, I found that to be my favorite part of the master's experience, and also my bachelor's as well.
Right. Okay. So again, just a general message to people listening to this. I mean, there is a tendency to talk about medical writing in medcoms, and it sort of dominates all the discussion. It's just important that we make the point that it isn't the only route in. There are lots of other roles, account management being the other main route in, but it's interesting, Ellie, you mentioned editing, because that's also an important route in. So people understand there are different roles out there. Some people have a very clear idea, I want to be a this. Other people are just interested in medcoms generally, and they find a way in. And one of the things is when you're in medcoms is you can move around a little bit. So, and a lot of the roles these days are a little bit hybrid sort of thing. So if people are at least sort of aware of that and thinking along those lines, that would probably be helpful. Okay, so I just want to talk now a little bit about the process. Okay. I'll stick with you, Ellie, for a moment. So you've got your job at AMICULUM. Just talk me through a little bit the process of getting the job at AMICULUM. I'm assuming there was a writing test involved, interview. Just summarize it, but just a little bit. What did you do? What were you faced with when faced with AMICULUM, as it were?
Yeah, absolutely. When I applied to AMICULUM, yeah, it does involve like a writing assessment as part of it. But I think the first, I guess, writing assessment that you is really when you send in your CV and your cover letter.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think unlike other positions, your CV and your cover letter are going to be scrutinized a lot more for its writing technicality and grammar and everything like that. So yeah, I sent that in, made sure to tie in both my degrees are sort of in natural sciences, and obviously I don't have a medical background. So I tied in my interest to human health into all of that and got my writing assessment. Yeah, and I think a big part of the writing assessment was sort of looking up what these things meant, all the different terminologies. There's a lot of abbreviations and unfamiliar terms coming in from natural sciences to look at anything to do with pharmacology. So there's a lot of that, sent it in, and had an interview with my panel of people that I now work with, and we went over the writing assessment.
Can I pin you down just in general terms? What sort of writing test did you have?
Yes, absolutely. So I was sent a poster, of like a real life poster, and I was told to do two things. One, to write up a written abstract from it, and then the other thing was to consider what a visual abstract of the poster would look like if the agency would post it on LinkedIn for doctors to see.
Excellent, perfect. That's great. A great illustration of the sort of thing you can face. Two quick questions before I move on. First is a point, not a question, but I want to pick it up because you made it, and that's a really important point. When people are applying, that first letter, that first CV, it's a crucial step. Okay, and if the job ad says, I don't know, write a covering letter of 500 words or whatever. People are looking for attention to detail, the ability to follow instructions, the ability to understand. So, don't write to me and go, dear Fred, and give me 1,000 words when I've asked for 500 words just to show you're clever. Understand, look at what they're asking for, and fit the brief. Okay, I can't emphasize that enough. There's a huge number of people, and we've had various discussions on webinars and things like that. Huge number of people who just don't think, whack something in because they think speed is important, or something, and then they just fall that first hurdle. So a little bit of thought is really, really important. And if you're applying for a medical writer's job, they want to know you can write, they want to know you can spell, and use spell check and all the rest of it, but don't provide something that doesn't back up your story. Excellent. My other question I just wanted to clarify was, I think you probably you haven't really made it clear. AMICULUM is a family of agencies. Did you apply to Comradis or to AMICULUM?
Yes, I applied to an entry-level writer position at Comradis, and I found I was particularly drawn to Comradis. Just they specialize in rare diseases.
Precisely. Okay. So again, I'm not trying to get bogged down in this. I'm just trying to get a sense of the process here, which is great. As you say, Comradis is very much a specialist in rare diseases, and that's part of why you wanted to go with them. So that all makes absolute sense. Right. I'm still trying to bounce around randomly here. So Lulu, I'm going to come to you next. Same question. Just talk us through quickly the process.
Yeah, so my experience was very similar. CV, cover letter, followed by the writing test, where I was asked to write a scientific abstract based on some data. If you don't have a huge amount of experience doing that kind of thing, that's not really an issue because there's millions of examples out there. In whatever disease area you're asked about, just go into a journal website, find an abstract, and see how they phrase things, what level of detail to include, all of that. And then that was followed by an interview where I was asked a little bit more about my understanding of the role. And I think things that are useful to prepare for that would be watching seminars like this. They're really useful. Asking around, if anyone wants to speak to me separately, they drop me an email. It's nice to be able to properly speak to people who are in the industry to get a deeper understanding.
Just out of interest, how long, do you remember, how long did it take you to go through the writing test, Lily?
I think maybe a couple of hours, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I'm just trying to get a sense here. Okay, I'm not trying to pin you down too much, but a couple of hours to do a writing test, with a bit of research and doing it properly and checking it and all this stuff seems reasonable and sensible to me. But maybe just gives people a feel for it. Having said that, were you given a week or two in which to complete the task? Was it explicit? Give us this writing test back by this date or something. How explicit was it?
Yeah, so I think I was asked, we want it back in a week. Please do not spend any more than 2 to 3 hours on it, because it's not a fair representation of how you're going to perform in the day-to-day job if you spend 4 days doing it. So yeah.
Okay. Again, I suppose the point I make to people is, in my experience anyway, most medcoms agencies aren't trying to catch you out here. They're going to tell you what they want clearly, and the important thing is to read it and to do what they suggest, as it were, and then you're not going to go too far wrong. They're not expecting you to be a medical writer. They're expecting to train you to be a medical writer in medcoms, and that's a really important point. What they're looking for at this stage is that interest and aptitude and ability to read a brief and to pay attention, etc., etc. Okay, so I think people should get that about this process. Okay, Luke. Okay, so come back. I'm guessing you went through a slightly different process, but I might be wrong, because you went into the Allegro program, didn't you? So were they doing an assessment day at that stage? Did you go through a process like that?
Yeah, so there was I think it's just over 2 years ago that I was applying like a 4-stage interview process. So okay. I think the first stage was a general telephone interview where I talked through my experience, what interested me in the role, all those sort of more general questions that you get asked in interviews. The second stage, so the second and third stage, I can't remember which way round it was. So it was either the assessment day first, where sort of you meet other applicants and sort of get assigned different tasks and whatnot. And then the writing test, which I believe was around 3 hours. So similar to what Ellie mentioned, there was an abstract to write from based off data. I believe we were also given an abstract and we had to highlight or comment on the different mistakes that had been made, right, and sort of correct them as required. And there was also one other task as well, which I can't quite remember. And then the fourth stage was sort of a combination of a recorded video response. So like you get asked a question on Skype and you had to record your response to that, as well as like a formal interview as well.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, again, I suppose the point I would be making is that there are lots of agencies out there, and whilst there's a degree of commonality about this approach, there's lots of variations on it, and agencies will do their own thing, sort of thing. But I think just amongst the three of you, that's just an interesting little insight into the sorts of activities that you might be faced with. Luke, sorry, I'm going to stick with you just for a minute then. So you're coming into, you've got the job, well done. You're coming into quite a formalised programme in the Allegro programme. So just tell us a little bit about how that worked over the first year or so, because it's sort of a year's programme, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So the first 2 months, you're with the intake of people that you joined with. So it's sort of the training period where you learn all the different skills that you would need to become a medical writer. So we had maybe a week on abstracts, a week on posters, a week on manuscripts, all that sort of thing. So just to develop those skills that will be required. And then the final 10 months of it is split into 2 5-month placements where you're placed into a different team for each of the 5 months. and you're sort of mentored through about what it actually is required to become a medical writer, given sort of real life tasks and how you'd fit within that team. And yeah, so you just become part of that team, and you slowly get sort of trusted with more work and try to introduce more and more independence as you become more experienced.
Okay. And we should, I know this has come up in different sort of discussions, so it might be just worth covering off, because some people do ask this. When you join the Allegro, and let's make it clear, this is the Allegro Rights program we're talking about, because Allegro has now expanded, and I think there's 3 different levels, and you know, people can go and Google it and so on. But once you're in, and maybe we can touch on this in a minute, once you're in Ashfield, there's a staged program, isn't there? So Allegro Right is what we're talking about in terms of entry. One of the things that seems to have cropped up in the past, so just to be clear about this, I mean, you get taken on as an associate medical writer full-time into a training program. It's not a question of you're on the training program in order to find out whether you have a job at the end of a year, sort of thing.
Yeah, so you become an associate medical writer for that 12 months, and then you're sort of assessed at the 12 months to see if you're ready to become promoted to a medical writer, or if a bit more training is required until you get to become the medical writer. So there's a call made after that 12 months, but it's not, I guess, that 12 months and they decide if you're to become a medical writer or not. It's just that if there's extra training needs to be put in place. Yeah,
and the other question that comes up about Allegro is, you know, can I apply to be part of Allegro just like as a training course? I'll pay for it. So like, no, you know, you're taken into Ashfield, and that's just the training program that is there. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay, let's bring, who should we bring in next? Ellie. So I should say, I know that MedComms overall, and I would say in the last few years particularly, there's a lot more training and development, a lot more training of entry level, but there is a range from quite formalized programs like the year we just heard about with Allegro, all the way down to basically on the job mentoring and all the rest of it. So Ellie, tell us a little bit about what happens in AMICULUM.
Yeah, at AMICULUM, it's a bit more of an informal mentorship approach. So when I joined with a team all writing on the same disease area. And yeah, I was basically trained through working my way up from basically checking the science of materials to starting writing like more simple things until I started getting more and more independence with writing. AMICULUM also offers an internal training, I guess, web page for everybody to go and look at. People at AMICULUM make these videos so that we can learn from each other. Anybody at the agency can learn from these.
And I'm stumbling, so I need to be a bit careful here because I don't always know what I'm talking about, right? But is this the AMICULUM curriculum? Is the
yes,
sort of in-house training program, and it's sort of from beginning, you know, so it's a lifelong, as it were, training program, isn't it? A lot of it's online, but it's the curriculum. Okay. So okay, Lulu, again, same sort of question in terms of Fishawack. You've got in. Just talk to me a little bit about the training program, because again, you've got quite a comprehensive training program. But it's not an Allegro type program, is it?
No, so I joined as a medical writer and was basically put straight into a team looking at lupus. And alongside that, I had the training program, which has developed since the time that I joined Fishawack. And I think they're just about to launch a sort of global professional development training courses for new writers, but mine was half on the job learning with mentoring. Everyone in the team supports you, as well as official training alongside.
Okay. There's a couple of questions coming. I'm just sort of members of the audience, do feel free to pitch in with any questions you've got, and we'll try and weave those into the discussion. Emmanuel, I think we probably answered your question in that you're asking, is there a standard number of assessment tests, or but it completely depends on the agencies, and we've had a good illustration from the 3 of you that there are different approaches to that. Okay. I know there's a limit to what you can say on this one, okay, but just to follow my logic through to where we are today. You're being trained. just give me a little bit of a sense of the sort of project work that you may be currently working on, okay? There's always a limit to how much we can talk about because it's all confidential and so on, okay? But just give me a sense, because I suspect the three of you are working on different sorts of projects and so on. That's what I'm hoping, okay? If you know, so make that up, make me right, okay? But basically, I suspect, I'm putting words in your mouth now, but I suspect you've had quite a lot of variety in the year or two that you've been there. But just give me a sense, or give the audience a bit of a sense of the sort of work you're doing as a medical writer in a business like yours after a year and a half, 2 years or something. Okay, who am I going to start with? Luke, go on, you go first. Have you got, can you just give us a feel for the sort of project work you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I mainly work with neurology and in particular Parkinson's disease. So what that has meant over the 2 years is a fair amount of manuscripts that I've been writing. Sort of the highlights I would say is I've worked quite closely with, they call them patient experts. So people with Parkinson's to sort of talk about their experience. So you're able to give their point of view because they know their own experience the best. So what that's involved is I've been writing plain language summaries. So we've had one published fairly recently that talks about the patient experience of having Parkinson's and what symptoms or experiences that are important to them that are maybe not assessed in the tools that are currently used to assess early stage Parkinson's. So that's been really interesting to sort of work more closely with the people with Parkinson's rather than just healthcare professionals or clinicians. So that's been a highlight for me. Other than that, I've worked across different Congress posters, abstracts, Q&As as well. Some in process, some have been published as well. Yeah, so that's sort of a bit of a summary of what I've been working on.
Can I just ask? So again, a couple of points in there. One, the patient side of it is interesting, and a lot of people in medcoms are working more on materials that have input from patients and maybe are for patients. There's a whole discussion around that, but the patient voice and the patient experience and so on is very important in what we're doing. I think when you started talking about doing manuscript work, my mind went to, I assumed, peer review manuscripts, but was that what you were talking about? Because or the manuscripts for a different sort of deliverable?
No, you are right. Peer reviewed manuscripts, so we submit them to the journal. They then get reviewed by the journal, and yeah, they make their decision based off that.
Okay, so a lot of what you've said I would regard as sort of pubs business, the sort of peer review manuscripts, conference type work and so on. Okay, Lulu, come on then. What sort of work have you been doing, or what are you doing at the moment?
So I started off looking at things like manuscripts and abstracts and posters, where we get a huge bunch of data and information from the pharmaceutical company on their research, and then we wade through it and make it into a publishable story. So I learned a lot doing that in lupus, and then I fancied a bit of a change, challenging my creative side a bit more, and I wanted to be a bit more, as you say, sort of healthcare professional facing and patient facing. So I've channeled more into the med affairs route, looking at chronic kidney disease, which includes things like videos, interviews, animations, a lot, as well as a lot of congress work.
Okay. So that's a different aspect of the business. And congress work, just out of interest, have you been to many conferences?
I have not been invited yet.
Not been invited yet.
I've worked on a few, but a lot of them have been US based, so it's made sense for a member of the US team to go, but there are a huge amount of opportunities to travel, and I think that won't be too far into the distance for me. I think I've got one of my colleagues is in Singapore at the moment helping to deliver a congress.
Okay, so again, the message is out there now. So if your managers are watching, they'll know what you want out of the next 6 months. Again, it's a useful message to put out there. There's a lot of travel involved, can be a lot of travel involved in this business, and you don't have to be organising the meetings. So as a writer, you might be going and you could be involved in all sorts of stages of producing the slides or writing up the reports and so on. Having said that, of course, it's a very different environment now to what it was 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, for instance. So there's a lot more virtual type meetings. So maybe there's a lot more sitting on on Zoom or a platform of some sort anyway, rather than actually going to Singapore and so on. Go on. So, but lots of variety potentially. Ellie, same sort of question to you again. Just talk a bit about what sort of work you're maybe doing at the moment.
Yeah, so I mainly do med affairs work, and that can involve a lot of like training materials, not just like webinars for the HCPs, the doctors themselves. It can involve training materials for new employees at the pharmaceutical companies. I also do a lot of Congress work and advisory boards. I've been fortunate to travel to 4 of the conferences now, so traveling has been
you are traveling.
large,
well done. Okay, good. Go on, give us a flavour. Where have you been?
I've been lucky enough to be to Germany, Canada, and the US twice. It's always funny to me to travel to the US for business.
I think it's worth, I always like to make the point, slightly flippantly, but slightly seriously, that it can sound a bit glamorous. And we can throw some places around that sound, quite good fun. But the work at Congress can be quite punishing, and you may not see anything other than the inside of a taxi or the inside of a hotel room or whatever it is. And B, there are some pretty rubbish venues that you end up at as well along the way, sort of thing. So let's not give anybody the wrong sense there, yeah. But it's also interesting, and I think just listening to you talk, I mean, hopefully people have picked up, and you'd almost think I'd planned this, wouldn't you? The 3 of you have done some quite different work there, which together demonstrates the spectrum of activity we do in MedComms, ranging from those sorts of peer review publications through to not just work for HCPs, but Ellie, you were talking about actually producing maybe training materials for, I guess, MSLs and reps and so on. So there's a whole range of activity, and we've talked about manuscripts, but we've also talked about the videos and the infographics and all of it. So people are getting the idea. I think there's quite a lot of variety. I'm just going to say this. Are you all going to nod at me or not? It gets a bit cliche, but most people go, no 2 days the same. It's the variety that sort of keeps us going. You disagree with me if you like, but that's a very common message that comes through. So everyone's happy to agree with me on that one, yeah? Okay, so I'm interested, we're going to have to be a little bit careful of time because I'm just going to talk all day if you're not careful. Some of the questions coming in, let's try and pick up on this a little bit. Well, let's phrase it like this, okay? What I'm interested in is, and you're all sort of new enough in the business, hopefully, to be remembering, when you were coming into the business and then you got in the business, what did you find that either did or didn't meet your expectations? Were there any surprises? That's probably what I'm more interested in. When you came into the business, were you surprised by anything? And I'm looking, and I'm going to choose Ellie. It might be there was nothing. But I'm just intrigued because most people usually come in and go, I was a bit taken aback by this or that. And I think that's just interesting. The transition from where you were into the business is now a commercial world. What sort of things do you remember thinking, gosh, that wasn't quite what I expected, if anything? Ellie, with you first.
Well, I mean, the job title is a medical writer, but it does involve quite a bit of client work. And I wasn't sort of expecting that, but I find it's actually my favorite part of the role now is dealing with the clients themselves.
Okay, good one. Luke, have you got anything?
Honestly, a lot of it was a surprise because while I was applying I was applying to be a medical writer. To be honest, I didn't know exactly what that meant. So it was only when I first started, it was like, right, this is what I've agreed to take part in. So yeah, for that reason, sort of just learning in that sort of 2-month training phase, all of it was fairly new to me. So I didn't really have much of an expectation in the first place. I was quite open to sort of learning new skills and learning what I would actually be doing day to day. So yeah, so for that reason, fairly.
Okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, Lulu, what about you? And how did you find the transition?
Yes, similar to Luke. Actually, I wasn't prepared for the culture shock really because I did a science degree. But it's a huge amount to learn when you first join because you're getting to grips with a whole new disease area. The writing itself is on another level from what you've ever done before, and also that level of client interaction, which is, it's a medical writer. You don't expect to be interacting with clients, but that's a huge amount of what we do.
Okay, and again, there's an interesting point in there. Some people think getting a job as a medical writer will mean I come in, I sit at the desk, and I just write, and that's just not the case. And in fact, some medical writers don't do an awful lot of medical writing at all. It's about creating content and communicating information and so on. You know, the writing can be a very important part of it. I'm not saying it's not, but you're dealing with a multidisciplinary group of people around you. You've got account managers and creatives and project managers and whatever, that's part of it. You've got clients with everything that means. You might have opinion leaders, investigators, academics, whatever, healthcare professionals, authors, patients, all sorts of people can be involved in these activities. So I think it's, again, an important message to get out there, which is very appealing to many people, is that they're coming in to be writing and communicating science, but they don't want to be just sitting at a desk and just writing. But that's not the point of it. Are we all just going to agree with that? Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go on. Not away. Okay. A couple of we've got a few minutes. Let's just picking up on a couple of questions that are coming in from the audience, and I'd just like to capture them within this conversation, as it were. We might come back to them later on, but there's a number of, at least 2 or 3 questions coming in from medics, for instance, and just to make the point that actually there's increasing numbers of medics coming into this business. But having said that, again, something that some people miss is that you don't have to be a medic to be a medical writer. I don't know whether you've experienced that yet, but it's like, oh, you must be a medic. No, that's not the case. So understand the terminology and the sort of business around. Simple question or answer to the questions from the guys who are medics who are wanting to know if they can get into the business. Yes. And there are increasing numbers of medics actually coming in. If you're coming as a medical writer, you may have to start as an associate medical writer like everybody else, or there are opportunities for medical advisors and so on, depends on your own position there. I just thought, actually, I would ask, that leads me to a question. I'm going to see what you all say to this, okay? There's a lot of debate and discussion, and you hear a lot of discussion about, you know, do you need a PhD to get into the business as a medical writer? Let's be specific, okay? Now, you 3 have all got MSCs, so clearly you don't need a PhD to get into the business. How am I going to phrase this question? So, having said that, and the answer from most people is, you know, we'll take anybody if they're the right sort of people, BSc, MSc, PhD. But how useful do you think it's been to you 3, to put you on the spot here? The question is, how useful has it been to have the MSc? Has that given you additional skills, transferable skills and so on? Or do you wish you'd not bothered with the MSc and come straight into BSc? Or do you think, well, actually a PhD would be very useful? This is putting you on the spot slightly. So who am I going? Ellie, you're nodding away, so go on. Can you answer that question? And there's no right or wrong answer to this question. I'm just interested what you think of that as a point.
Of course. I think it personally helped me. I mean, my bachelor's degree is in psychology, so I completely switched tacks and did my master's in molecular biology. And I think that's kind of a lot like the switch into MedCom. So that helped. And also the writing of the master's thesis of that high caliber of like writing, that helped. But I think if you have like solid writing experience in your bachelor's, that will be fine as well, as you say, for the right person.
And no thinking that, oh, I wish I had a PhD because it would make it easier or different or something. That's not something you'd worry about.
No.
Just be honest with me. Just be honest with me. Okay, go on. Say I'm interested. Actually, we might just end up with the same answer, so we'll skip over it quickly. But Luke, go on. What's your answer to that question? And you had a bit of work experience as well, which was interesting. So you had some more MSc plus some work experience, yeah. So was that useful? You know, is it useful to get that sort of additional experience before coming into the business?
So I say the benefit of my MSc is more indirect. I don't think I would have got that health advisor role without my MSc, just because of what I sort of specialised in then. And I don't think I would have got this medical writer job without the health advisor role. So like it sort of helped me down that path.
Right.
But saying that, I joined with an intake of people, and in that intake, some people only had BSc, some people had PhDs, people had worked in other jobs before for however many years, and other people came straight out of uni as well. So like there was a bigger variety, and I don't feel like I was held back by not doing a PhD, and I believe the people who did BScs didn't feel that they're held back by not doing MScs either. So you're all sort of fairly new to the role when you start, and you sort of start on that level playing field and sort of just build up through the training.
Okay, Lily, have you got a view on this, a comment on that?
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, obviously, the more prior experience you have, the less you have to learn on the job. But I've certainly noticed a shift in hiring of people without PhDs and further education. And I think with that has come the right support to bring you up to speed. And it doesn't really take a huge amount of time. Once you've written a manuscript, you're basically, you know the deal.
Okay. I'm going to just put a little bit of context on that, if I may, because it is an important question and it gets talked about a lot. And I think the message coming through from all of you is once you're in, it doesn't make a lot of difference. The people who get in with a BSc or an MSc or a PhD are actually probably treated roughly the same, in reality, yeah. But it is very clear that more people get in with at least an MSc than a BSc. And I think that's a message that people should take on board. And then nobody, I mean, it's debatable quite what the reasons are. But I think as you go from BSc to an MSc, you do gain a lot of experience, life skills, and also just experience and research skills and so on. And a PhD can give you a lot of very good experience. So as you go down that pathway, your chances of getting in are actually increased. And that's just a simple fact. Having said that, someone with a BSc who wants to get in can get in and do very well. So there's a little bit of just balance in there that I just think people should think about a little bit, if that makes sense. Does that all make sense to everybody? I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. Disagree with me if you like. Okay, we're not going to get through all these questions. I know we're not going to get to all the questions. I just thought we'd skip over a couple of things. There's people asking, when do I join and what's the timetables? I mean, the truth is, there's lots of different agencies doing lots of different things at lots of different times. Some of them have programs, a bit like the Allegro program, which starts at particular times of the year. Others are basically just looking for people all the time and bring you into some sort of an ongoing program. I think what I would like to do, because we are going to run out of time, is just ask very quickly. I'm going to, again, put you on the spot, guys. I know I'm putting you on the spot slightly, but just very quickly in the final 30 seconds or so, and I'm going to start with you, Luke, okay? If I'm a fresh-faced somebody thinking I might like to come into medical writing, what would be, one tip that you throw my way?
I would just say try and get as much writing experience as you possibly can.
Okay.
However, which way that is, if it's I had it with my old job, but there are different opportunities that you could seek out before applying, and I think it just helps the application process. And then once you start, it sort of
sounds obvious, doesn't it? But you've got to want to be a writer and want to write, and the more writing you do. The one thing I always again say at this sort of stage is be a little bit careful, because blogs and things like this, all good stuff if it's sensible stuff, but be careful about that blog that you wrote the morning after the university party, which you thought was very funny at the time and you've now forgotten about, because people will be looking at your social media footprint sort of thing. But good writing, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be medical writing, is going to show an aptitude and an interest. Lulu, go on. Same question. Have you got something you can throw back at me? What's a tip you'd throw my way?
I would say view the first few months as a learning journey. Don't take feedback personally, because it's the nature of the job to write something, then someone will review it and tell you all the things that are wrong. So be comfortable with the idea that you'll have a lot to learn and just enjoy it.
Okay, again, a really important point there, which we probably haven't addressed, is the fact as medical writers, you may be surprised at how much criticism you get, hopefully constructive, but your work will be, crawled all over by colleagues, by clients, by all sorts of people, and you've got to have a bit of a tough skin and see that as a learning thing, not as someone being critical. But that's something that academics sometimes find a bit difficult because they're not used to that. Ellie, just final word to you. Have you got a tip that you can throw my way, this fresh-faced young chap that I am?
You're new to
or
the
not?
field.
Okay.
I would say say yes to every opportunity that you can in medical writing, because the variety is so big. You don't know what you're going to like until you try it necessarily.
Really, that's a really important point, I think. And there are plenty of opportunities within medcoms and medical writing to specialise in, whether it's therapy area or types of projects or whatever else, but get as much experience as you can. Okay, look, we're over time. I want to just carry on talking, but we're going to have to draw the line there. So everybody in the audience, thank you very much for joining in. An important point about this is I'm hoping people are going to make contact with each other. So members of the panel, I know I can speak for you and say that you'd be very happy for people to reach out to you. LinkedIn is the easy way of doing that, yeah? Lots of information that we provide at FirstMedCommsJob.com and the associated websites. So, and I'm always very happy to help if I can. But for today, I'd like to say a huge thank you, give a little wave, and we'll stop the recording. Wish everybody a good day. Take care.